My son Bryce stood at the microphone with that confident smile I used to love, holding up a paddle with my name on it. And now, he announced to 285 people in crystal-studded gowns and black tie tuxedos, "Who wants to bid on a dinner with my boring mom?" Starting at $2. Laughter rippled through the ballroom like a wave. I felt my face burn hot as servers froze mid-pour. Then a voice from the back cut through the noise. $2 million. I sat frozen at table 17. The word boring still echoing in my ears, and suddenly I was somewhere else entirely. Not in this ballroom with its crystal chandeliers and ice sculptures shaped like swans, but back in time, back to when things made sense. I'm 63 years old now, wearing a simple navy dress I found at the Macy's clearance rack for $79. Around me sit women draped in Versace and Chanel, their wrists glittering with diamonds that could pay my rent for a year. I know I don't belong here, and apparently my son knows it too. But how did we get to this moment? How did the boy who used to hold my hand crossing the street grow into the man who just put me up for auction like a joke? 28 years ago, I was Dr. Dakota Morgan. Not just a doctor, but a brilliant infectious disease researcher at Stanford Medical Center. I had my own laboratory, a team of 12 researchers working under me, and we were on the verge of something extraordinary, a breakthrough in vaccine development that could save millions of lives. My papers were published in The Lancet and the New England Journal of Medicine. At 35 years old, colleagues were calling me one of the greatest minds in the field. I was married to Thomas then, a gentle architect who designed sustainable housing. He had kind eyes and a quiet laugh, and he believed in my work completely. When I had to work late, he'd bring dinner to the lab. When I presented at conferences, he'd sit in the front row taking notes, even though he barely understood the science. He just wanted to be part of my world. We had a son together, Bryce, born when I was 34. A beautiful, curious little boy, with Thomas eyes and my stubborn determination. Life felt full and purposeful. I was changing the world during the day and coming home to my family at night. Then Thomas died. A car accident on Highway 1, heading home from a client meeting. A truck driver fell asleep at the wheel. Thomas never had a chance. He was gone before the ambulance arrived, and suddenly I was a 35-year-old widow with a 4-year-old son who kept asking when Daddy was coming home. The life insurance wasn't enough. Thomas had been building his practice, taking lower fees to work on affordable housing projects. We had savings, but not the kind that would support a family long term. I had to make a choice, and I had exactly 3 days to make it before returning to the lab. I could continue my research. It would mean 80-hour work weeks, constant travel to conferences and trial sites, evenings and weekends in the laboratory. I could hire nannies, put Bryce in after-school programs, let other people raise him while I pursued this thing that mattered so much to the world. Or I could choose him. I chose him. I left Stanford. I left my research team, who begged me to reconsider. I left my laboratory with its humming equipment and petri dishes full of possibility. I left the breakthrough we were months away from achieving. I walked away from everything I'd worked for since medical school. I took a nursing job at a community clinic in Sacramento, a woman with a medical degree from Stanford, checking blood pressure and administering flu shots. We moved from our nice 3-bedroom house in Palo Alto to a 2-bedroom apartment in a modest neighborhood. I drove a 15-year-old Honda Civic that I kept running with duct tape and prayer. Those were the sacrifice years, though I never called them that out loud. I lived frugally, shopping at thrift stores and clipping coupons. I packed Bryce's lunch every single day for 13 years because buying school lunch would have meant less money for his college fund. I wore the same 3 pairs of work scrubs and 2 dresses for anything else. I cut my own hair in the bathroom mirror. But I was there, I was there when Bryce woke up screaming from nightmares about his father. I was there for every soccer game, sitting in the bleachers with my thermos of coffee from home. I was there at the kitchen table until midnight, helping with algebra homework and science projects. I was there. Bryce got into Princeton. Full tuition, no scholarships. I paid every penny, working double shifts at the clinic and picking up weekend hours at the hospital. When he called home excited about his classes, about the friends he was making, about the business ideas he was developing, I felt proud. So incredibly proud. Then came Harvard Business School. More tuition, more late nights for me. But he was thriving, becoming this confident young man with big dreams. I wore the same 3 pairs of work scrubs and 2 dresses for anything else. I cut my own hair in the bathroom mirror. But I was there. I was there when Bryce woke up screaming from nightmares about his father. I was there for every soccer game, sitting in the bleachers with my thermos of coffee from home. I was there at the kitchen table until midnight, helping with algebra, homework, and science projects. I was there. Bryce got into Princeton. Full tuition, no scholarships. I paid every penny, working double shifts at the clinic and picking up weekend hours at the hospital. When he called home excited about his classes, about the friends he was making, about the business ideas he was developing, I felt proud. So incredibly proud. Then came Harvard Business School. More tuition, more late nights for me. But he was thriving, becoming this confident young man with big dreams. He'd glance around at my secondhand furniture and suggest, carefully, that maybe I should upgrade my wardrobe or think about moving somewhere nicer, as if my life embarrassed him. During our dinners together, He'd check his phone constantly. Our conversations grew shorter, more superficial. He'd talk about his company, about deals and investors and growth strategies. When I'd ask about his life, about whether he was happy, He'd wave it off. "I'm fine, Mom. Everything's great." But I could feel him pulling away, and I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know that the boy I'd sacrificed everything for was learning to be ashamed of where he came from. 3 weeks before the gala, my phone rang. Bryce's name lit up the screen, and my heart did that little leap it always did when he called, "Mom." His voice sounded distracted, like he was doing something else while talking to me. I heard keyboard clicks in the background. "Honey, hi. How are you?" "Good, good. Listen, I'm hosting a charity gala. Big event, raising money for the MedTech Education Fund. Medical scholarships for underprivileged students. You should come. Not I want you there, or it would mean a lot to have you there. Just you should come." Like it was an obligation, a box to check. "Oh, that sounds wonderful. When is it?" 3 weeks from Saturday. At the Grand Palace Hotel in San Francisco. It'll be good for you to see what I've built. There it was again. That subtle implication that I needed to see his success, to understand that He'd become someone important, as if I didn't already know, as if I hadn't sacrificed my own career to make his possible. "I'd love to come," I said, pushing down the hurt. "What should I wear? Something nice. It's black tie. Formal. Okay. I'll find something." He was quiet for a moment, and I thought maybe He'd say something more, something warm. But then, "Great. I'll have my assistant send you the details. See you there, Mom." And he was gone. I spent the next 2 weeks looking for the right dress. I went to department stores and boutiques, pulling dresses off racks and checking price tags that made me gasp. $300, $500, $800 for a dress I'd wear once. I finally found the navy blue one at Macy's, marked down to $79. Simple, elegant, with a modest neckline and 3/4 sleeves. It fit well enough. I bought plain black heels for $35 and called it done. The night before the gala, I laid the dress out on my bed and stared at it. I imagined walking into that ballroom, seeing Bryce in his element, surrounded by successful people. Maybe this would be good. Maybe seeing me there, being proud of me, would remind him where he came from, would remind him that I mattered too. I let myself hope. Saturday evening, I took an Uber to the Grand Palace Hotel. The fare was $42, which made me wince, but I didn't want to deal with parking in the city. The driver dropped me at the grand entrance, where valets in white gloves were opening doors for guests stepping out of Mercedes and Teslas. I walked through the marble lobby, following signs to the grand ballroom. The doors were 20 feet tall, polished mahogany with gold handles. A young woman in an elegant black suit checked my name against a list and smiled professionally. "Welcome, Miss Morgan. Your table assignment is inside." The ballroom took my breath away. 3 enormous crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling painted with clouds and cherubs. Round tables covered in white silk surrounded a central dance floor. Ice sculptures depicting medical symbols gleamed under soft lighting. Champagne fountains bubbled at stations around the room, and servers in crisp uniforms circulated with trays of hors d'oeuvres. I found the seating chart near the entrance. My fingers traced down the alphabetical list until I found my name. Table 17. My stomach sank. I scanned the chart quickly. Table 1. In the center near the stage, that's where Bryce would be sitting. Tables 2 through 10 were clearly for major donors and important guests. I was at 17, practically in the back corner near the kitchen doors. I made my way to my table, weaving through clusters of people who all seemed to know each other. The women wore gowns that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Tiffany necklaces, Cartier watches, Harry Winston earrings. The men were in custom tuxedos, discussing stock portfolios and vacation homes in Napa. At table 17, I found my name card between 2 empty seats. The other 6 people at the table were already seated, engaged in animated conversation. I sat down quietly, smoothing my navy dress and placing my simple black purse on my lap. "Hello," I said to the woman next to me. She glanced over, gave me a polite smile, and immediately turned back to her conversation. No one asked my name or tried to include me. I watched the ballroom fill up, 285 guests, according to the program on my plate. Business executives, tech entrepreneurs, hospital administrators, local politicians, and somewhere in this sea of important people was my son. I spotted him near table 1, working the room like a natural politician. He looked so handsome in his tuxedo, so confident. He laughed at something a woman in a red sequined gown said, placed a hand on an older man's shoulder in a gesture of camaraderie. Everyone seemed drawn to him, eager for a moment of his attention. He didn't look toward table 17, didn't scan the room looking for his mother. Why would he? Had put me where I wouldn't embarrass him. Dinner was served. Chilean sea bass with truffle risotto, roasted asparagus, microgreens with champagne vinaigrette. It was beautiful and probably delicious, but I could barely taste it. My stomach was too tight with anxiety and hurt. Halfway through the meal, Bryce took the stage. The lights dimmed slightly, and a spotlight illuminated him at the podium. He looked so poised up there, so in control. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight." His voice carried perfectly through the sound system. "Every person in this room is proof that with education and drive, anything is possible. Self-made." That's what he was implying. That head pulled himself up through hard work and determination. The woman next to me whispered to her companion, "Hez, so inspiring. A real self-made success story." I wanted to stand up and scream. I wanted to tell everyone in that ballroom about the ramen I ate for months so he could have real meals, about the shoes I taped together so he could have new ones for school, about the career I abandoned so he could have a mother. But I stayed silent, picking at my sea bass, invisible at table 17. After dinner, the auction began. A slick auctioneer in a silver bow tie took the stage, and items appeared on the big screens flanking the podium. Dinner with a state senator, $5,000. A week at a vacation home in Tahoe, $12,000. Courtside tickets to a Warriors game, $8,000. The bidding was fast and competitive. These people spent money like breathing, paddles flying up without hesitation. Then Bryce returned to the microphone, and something in his expression made my stomach clench. He had that playful smile, the one he used when he was about to make a joke. "And for our final item," he said, his eyes scanning the crowd, "something special. A dinner with my mother." My heart leaped. Maybe this was his way of honoring me, of showing everyone that I mattered. But then I heard his tone. Too casual, too joking. "She's not famous or anything, just my regular mom." Light laughter from the crowd. "But hey, someone might want to hear embarrassing stories about me as a kid, right?" The laughter grew. My face began to burn. Bryce held up a paddle, and my face appeared on the big screens. A photo from his Harvard graduation, me standing slightly behind him in a simple dress while other families posed in designer outfits. I looked plain, ordinary, out of place. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't an honor. This was entertainment. I was the amusing final item. The joke to end the evening on a light note. "Come on, folks. Who wants dinner with my boring mom?" The word hit me like a physical blow. Boring. Head called me boring in front of 285 people. My face, projected 15 feet high on both screens, seemed to grow even plainer as the word echoed through the ballroom. "Let's start the bidding at, let's say $2. The room exploded with laughter. $2. The previous auction items had gone for thousands, tens of thousands, and I was worth $2. Someone at table 3 shouted, "I'll give you 3 if she does my taxes." The laughter grew louder, rolling through the ballroom like thunder. Bryce grinned, clearly pleased with himself, but no one actually bid. The laughter faded into an awkward silence. 5 seconds passed. 10. 20. The auctioneer shifted uncomfortably. Bryce's smile grew strained around the edges. "Come on, someone must want to hear about my terrible teenage years." He tried again, forcing a chuckle. A few polite laughs answered him, but still no bids. 30 seconds. 40. The silence became excruciating. I sat at table 17 with my head down, staring at my hands folded in my lap. My whole body trembled. I couldn't look up, couldn't bear to see the pity or amusement in the faces around me. This moment would replay in my mind forever. The moment my own son reduced me to nothing in front of hundreds of strangers. 50 years of dignity crumbled in that ballroom. All the grace I'd maintained through losing Thomas, through leaving my career, through years of struggling and sacrificing, it all disintegrated under the weight of that silence. The woman next to me leaned over and whispered, "That's awful," but not loud enough for anyone important to hear. Just loud enough to confirm what I already knew. This was cruel, and everyone saw it. My mind flooded with memories, unbidden and relentless. The night Thomas died, how I'd held 4-year-old Bryce while he sobbed, promising him we'd be okay. The letter from Stanford, offering to hold my position for 6 months, begging me to reconsider. My hands cramping from double shifts at the clinic, counting pills and bandaging wounds. The envelope from Princeton with Bryce's acceptance letter. How I'd cried with joy even knowing what it would cost me. The thrift store where I bought his school clothes, always careful to remove the tags so he wouldn't know. The nights I ate ramen and cereal so he could have chicken and vegetables. The worn-out shoes I kept resolving because new ones would have meant less in the college fund. His Harvard graduation, how Head barely introduced me to his friends, how Id stood on the periphery of every photo, every sacrifice, every choice, every moment I'd put him first. And this is what I was worth to him. Boring. $2. A punchline. I reached for my purse, preparing to stand up and leave. I'd call an Uber from the lobby, go back to my small apartment, and try to forget this night ever happened. I'd try to forgive my son for not seeing me, for not knowing me, for reducing everything I was to nothing. I was halfway to standing when a voice cut through the ballroom. $2 million. The words were clear, authoritative, impossible to misunderstand. Every head in the room turned. I froze, half standing, my hand still gripping the back of my chair. The voice came from near the bar, in the back corner opposite my table. A man in an impeccably tailored gray suit stood with his hand raised. He was older, late 60s perhaps, with silver hair swept back from a distinguished face. Wire-rimmed glasses caught the light. He held himself with the quiet confidence of someone used to important rooms and serious decisions. The auctioneer stammered, "I'm sorry, sir. Did you say $2 million? The man's voice carried perfectly, each word deliberate and clear. "For dinner with Dr. Dakota Morgan, Dr. Morgan." The ballroom erupted in confused murmuring. $2 million! Dr. Morgan. Who was this man? Why had he used my title? I hadn't been called doctor in 28 years. Bryce stood frozen at the microphone, his confident smile completely gone. He stared at the stranger, then at me, then back at the stranger. His face had gone pale. I slowly lowered myself back into my chair, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The woman next to me grabbed my hand, her eyes wide. The stranger began walking toward the front of the room. The crowd parted for him instinctively. He moved with purpose, with gravity, and the entire ballroom fell silent watching him. He reached the stage and, without waiting for permission, climbed the 3 steps and took the microphone from Bryce's unresisting hand. "My name is Dr. Gregory Walsh," he said, his voice now filling the room through the speakers. "I'm the director of the Global Health Initiative at Johns Hopkins University. Johns Hopkins, one of the most prestigious medical institutions in the world. And 30 years ago," he continued, his eyes finding mine across the ballroom, "I was a junior researcher at Stanford Medical Center." My breath caught. Stanford. My past. The life it left behind. I worked under the supervision of one of the most brilliant medical minds I've ever encountered in my 40-year career. He paused, and in that pause, I felt the weight of decades. "Dr. Dakota Morgan." Every eye in the ballroom turned to me. I sat frozen, tears streaming down my face, unable to move or speak. Bryce found his voice, weak and confused. "I'm sorry, sir, but I think there's been a mistake. My mother was never a doctor. She's a nurse. She works at a clinic in Sacramento." Dr. Walsh turned to look at Bryce, and there was something in his expression that made my son take a step back. Not anger exactly, but profound disappointment mixed with disbelief. "Your mother, Mr. Morgan," Dr. Walsh said slowly, "wasn't just a doctor. Doctor." Walsh turned back to face the ballroom, still holding the microphone, his posture commanding everyone's attention. The confusion in the room was palpable. At table 1, wealthy donors leaned forward. At the back tables, people were whispering urgently to each other. And at table 17, I sat with tears rolling down my cheeks, unable to comprehend what was happening. "Your mother was the lead researcher on Project Triumph." Dr. Walsh continued, his voice steady and clear. a revolutionary vaccine development program at Stanford Medical Center. We were working on breakthrough treatments for viral infections that were resistant to conventional methods. He walked slowly across the stage as he spoke, and Bryce stood off to the side looking like he might be ill. Dr. Morgan's work was going to save millions of lives. That's not hyperbole. Millions. She was developing vaccine platforms that could be rapidly adapted to new viral threats. Her methodology was years, perhaps decades, ahead of its time. Someone in the audience gasped. An older man at table 4 was nodding, recognition dawning on his face. She was nominated for the Lasker Award for Medical Innovation when she was only 34 years old. Her papers were published in The Lancet, the New England Journal of Medicine, Nature. She presented at the World Health Organization. At 35, she was being called one of the greatest minds in infectious disease research of her generation. The room was absolutely silent now, except for Dr. Walsh's voice and the sound of my quiet crying. Then, in 1997, she disappeared from the medical community, just vanished. We all wondered what happened. Brilliant researchers don't just walk away from work like that. Her laboratory was left intact. Her position remained open for 6 months because the administration at Stanford hoped she'd come back. We all did. He paused, his eyes finding mine again across the distance. I found out years later what happened. Her husband had died suddenly. A car accident, and she had a 4-year-old son who needed his mother. Bryce made a small sound, barely audible, but I heard it. So did the people near the stage. She chose you, Mr. Morgan. Doctor. Walsh turned to face Bryce directly. She gave up everything to raise you. Do you have any idea what that cost her? What that cost the world? I didn't. Bryce started, but his voice failed. Her research eventually continued without her. It took 10 more years to achieve what she could have done in 2. That's 10 years of lives that could have been saved, 10 years of suffering that could have been prevented. But she chose to be your mother. She chose you over the work of her lifetime. Dr. Walsh's voice grew harder, more intense. And you just called her boring. You auctioned her off for $2 in front of 285 people. The microphone Bryce had been holding earlier lay on the stage where Head dropped it when Dr. Walsh first spoke. Now Bryce stood frozen, his hands shaking, unable to form words. I happened to be visiting family in Sacramento 12 years ago. Doctor, Walsh continued, his tone softening slightly. I had a medical emergency, nothing serious, but I went to an urgent care clinic. And there she was. Dr. Dakota Morgan, one of the finest medical researchers I'd ever known, taking vitals and handing out prescriptions for sinus infections, his voice caught with emotion. I asked her why she never came back to research, why she never returned to Stanford. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photograph. You, Mr. Morgan, in your Princeton sweatshirt. And she said, "This is why." And I'd do it again. Someone in the audience was crying openly now, not just me. The sound of sniffling and quiet sobs filled the ballroom. The woman next to me was still holding my hand, gripping it tightly. The medical community never forgot Dr. Morgan. Doctor, Walsh said, addressing the entire room now. Her research papers are still cited today, still taught in medical schools around the world. I teach them at Johns Hopkins. Every semester, I tell my graduate students about her work. And I tell them about the brilliant researcher who sacrificed her career out of love. He walked to the front edge of the stage. When I saw this event tonight, when I saw Dr. Morgan's name in the program, I had to come. I had to see her again after all these years. I had no idea. He stopped, too angry to continue for a moment. Then he composed himself. Mr. Morgan, your company, MedConnect, what does it do exactly? Bryce's voice came out hoarse. It connects patients with medical specialists using technology. Medical technology. built on the foundation of medical research and innovation. Dr. Walsh nodded slowly. Research like your mother once did. The irony is that you've become wealthy, built a $300 million company on the very field your mother sacrificed for you. You've made your fortune in medical technology, while the woman who could have revolutionized that field packed your school lunches and worked night shifts as a clinic nurse. A woman at table 2 said loudly enough for many to hear, "Oh my God, that's horrible." Several other voices murmured agreement. The mood in the ballroom had shifted completely. What had been an elegant charity gala was now something else entirely. A reckoning. My $2 million bid stands, Dr. Walsh announced firmly. But I'm not doing this for a dinner, Dr. Morgan. He looked directly at me. I'm making this donation in honor of you. In honor of everything you sacrificed, everything you gave up. The applause started at table 2 and spread through the ballroom like wildfire. Within seconds, people were standing. Table after table rose to their feet. A standing ovation, growing louder and louder until it filled the entire ballroom. I sat at table 17, overwhelmed, tears streaming down my face. The woman next to me was standing and clapping. The man across from me had tears in his eyes. Everyone at my table was on their feet. Everyone except Bryce. He stood alone on the stage, not clapping, his face a mask of shock and shame. "But I have conditions for this donation. Doctor," Walsh said when the applause finally died down, "the MedTech Education Fund must be renamed. It will be called the Dr. Dakota Morgan Medical Scholarship Fund. And Dr. Morgan must have full oversight of how those funds are distributed. She will choose the recipients. She will determine the criteria. This will be her legacy, as it should be." The applause erupted again, even louder this time. I covered my face with my hands, sobbing openly now, not from humiliation anymore, but from something else. Validation, recognition, the acknowledgement that my life had mattered, that my choices had meaning. An older woman approached the stage from table 5. Dr. Walsh handed her the microphone. "I'm Dr. Helen Patterson," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I'm on the board of San Francisco General Hospital, and I knew Dr. Morgan's work. I followed Project Triumph closely because my daughter was part of one of the early trial studies." She turned to look at me, tears running down her face. "My daughter was 6 years old, battling a resistant viral infection. The conventional treatments weren't working. We were losing her. Dr. Morgan's experimental vaccine saved my daughter's life. Sarah is 34 now, married, with 2 children of her own. She's alive because of you, Doctor." Patterson stepped down from the stage and walked directly to table 17. People moved aside to let her through. She reached me and pulled me up into a fierce embrace. "I never got to thank you," she whispered in my ear. "I tried to find you years ago, but you'd left Stanford. Thank you. Thank you for my daughter's life." I held on to her, both of us crying, and suddenly there were more people around us. A man in his 50s introduced himself as a doctor who'd read my research papers in medical school. "You inspired me to go into infectious disease research," he said. A younger woman, maybe 40, told me she'd written her doctoral dissertation on my work. "You changed my life," she said simply. More people came forward, one after another, sharing how my work had touched them, influenced them, saved people they loved. The ballroom had transformed from a place of my humiliation into something sacred, a recognition of a life's worth that I'd thought was lost forever. Through the crowd, I could see Bryce still standing on the stage, alone, isolated, watching his mother be celebrated by people he'd invited to his event, people who now knew the truth about where his privilege really came from. He looked lost, And for the first time in years, I saw him clearly as the little boy who'd lost his father, the child I'd chosen over everything else, the son I loved despite this terrible thing had just done. Doctor Walsh waited until the crowd around me began to disperse before he spoke again. People were still standing, still emotional, but they returned to their seats as he raised the microphone once more. Dr. Morgan could have had nannies, he said, his voice carrying that professorial authority that commanded attention. She could have hired help. Her salary at Stanford would have supported that easily. She could have continued her research and ensured her son was cared for. He paused, letting that sink in. But she didn't trust anyone else with him after losing her husband. She told me once that when Thomas died, she realized how fragile life was, how quickly we could lose the people we loved. She couldn't bear the thought of her son growing up with strangers, of missing his childhood while she pursued her work. So she made a choice that few people would have the courage to make. An older man at table 8 stood up. He was perhaps 70, distinguished, with kind eyes behind glasses similar to Dr. Walsh's. "May I say something?" he asked. Dr. Walsh nodded and gestured for him to come forward. The man walked to the stage with the careful movements of someone who'd lived a long, full life. Dr. Walsh handed him the microphone. "I'm Dr. Harold Preston. I was the department head at Stanford when Dr. Morgan worked there. I tried everything I could think of to convince her to stay. I offered her reduced hours, flexible scheduling, additional support staff. I told her we could hold her position for a year, 2 years, as long as she needed." His voice grew thick with emotion. But she was resolute. She said Shed made her choice, and she was at peace with it. I remember her last day. She came to my office, handed me her security badge, and thanked me for the opportunity to work there. I asked her if she had any regrets. She said, "My only regret would be failing my son when he needs me most." Dr. Preston looked out at the audience, then at Bryce on the stage. "Your mother was more than brilliant, Mr. Morgan. She was principled. She understood what mattered most in life, and she had the courage to live by those principles even when it cost her everything professionally. That's not boring. That's extraordinary." He handed the microphone back to Dr. Walsh and returned to his seat. The ballroom was silent, except for scattered sniffling. "I want to make something very clear," Dr. Walsh continued. "The work Dr. Morgan started didn't die when she left. Her research team continued. But it took them 10 years to achieve what she would have completed in perhaps 2. That vaccine platform she was developing? It's now used worldwide. It's saved countless lives during flu seasons, during viral outbreaks, during the pandemic 3 years ago. Her methodology is the foundation of rapid vaccine response." He pulled out his phone and held it up so the cameras could project it on the screens. "This is a citation count from Google Scholar. Dr. Dakota Morgan's published papers have been cited 4,217 times in other research. Her work is foundational to modern infectious disease treatment. Medical students read her papers in their first year. Researchers build on her methodologies. Every time someone receives a vaccine that uses her platform, they're alive because of work she did 30 years ago. The numbers appeared on the big screens. 4,217 citations. My hands trembled as I stared at them. But more importantly, Dr. Walsh said, his voice softening, she raised a son. She was there for every important moment of his childhood. She paid for his education. She gave him the foundation that allowed him to build his own success. That matters too. Both things matter. The tragedy isn't that she chose her son over her career. The tragedy is that her son never knew what she gave up, never understood the magnitude of her sacrifice. He turned to face Bryce directly. "And the tragedy is that you built your wealth on medical technology while treating the woman who pioneered that field like she was worthless. You stood in front of these people and called her boring. Starting bid, $2. As if a human life, any human life, but especially your mother's life, could be valued so cheaply. Bryce's face crumpled. He looked like he might collapse. A woman in her 40s stood up at table 12. "I'd like to say something," she called out. "Doctor?" Walsh gestured for her to come forward. She took the microphone with shaking hands. "I'm Dr. Angela Russell. I'm an infectious disease specialist at UCSF Medical Center. I teach Dr. Morgan's research methods to residents. I make them read her 1994 paper on adaptive vaccine platforms. It's required reading." She looked at me with such reverence it made me want to hide. "Dr. Morgan, you're a legend in my field. We talk about you. We cite you. We build on your work every single day. When I heard you'd left Stanford, I spent months trying to understand why. When I finally learned the truth, I used your story in my lectures. I tell my students that medicine isn't just about research. It's about understanding what matters most. It's about recognizing that we're humans first, doctors second." She wiped her eyes. "You chose humanity. You chose love. And your work still saved millions of lives, even after you left. That's the mark of true genius. Research so groundbreaking that it continued changing the world even in your absence." She handed the microphone back and returned to her seat. The applause was quieter this time, but somehow more profound. Not the excited clapping of earlier, but something deeper. Respect. Understanding. "Doctor." Walsh looked at Bryce, who was now sitting on the edge of the stage, his head in his hands. "Mr. Morgan, I want you to understand something. The medical community remembers your mother. We honor her. We celebrate her contributions, even though she left us decades ago. But apparently, her own son forgot who she was. Or maybe he never really knew." "I didn't know," Bryce whispered, but the microphone caught it, amplified it throughout the ballroom. "She never told me. Did you ever ask?" Dr. Walsh's question hung in the air like an indictment. The silence that followed was devastating. "The scholarship fund." "Doctor," Walsh said, turning back to the audience, "will be renamed effective immediately. The Dr. Dakota Morgan Medical Scholarship Fund, with an initial donation from me of $2 million, and I'm challenging everyone in this room to match my donation. Not for Mr. Morgan's company, not for his reputation, but for Dr. Morgan, for everything she sacrificed, for everything she gave up, for the lives her research saved and continues to save." He held up his phone again. "I'm transferring the funds right now. $2 million to honor a woman who should have won a Nobel Prize but chose instead to raise her son." The ballroom erupted in applause once again, and this time, people were pulling out their phones. Donations started flooding in. $5,000, $10,000, $25,000, $50,000. The numbers appeared on the screens as people transferred money in real time. Within 10 minutes, the fund had grown to $4.3 million. All of it in my name. All of it because these people, these strangers, understood something my son had forgotten. That sacrifice matters. That love matters. That a mother's choice to put her child first is worth more than any professional accolade. I sat at table 17, surrounded by people who now looked at me with admiration and respect, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 28 years. I felt seen. The gala ended, but people lingered. Small groups gathered around the ballroom, discussing what they'd just witnessed. I was surrounded by well-wishers, doctors and researchers, and philanthropists who wanted to shake my hand, share their stories, exchange contact information. Dr. Walsh stayed by my side the entire time, introducing me to colleagues, protecting me from being overwhelmed. "Dr. Morgan needs some air," he'd say gently when the crowd pressed too close. Let's give her some space. I looked around for Bryce several times but couldn't see him. The stage was empty. Table 1, where Head been seated earlier, was vacant. His absence felt like a weight in my chest. His assistant, a young woman in a sleek black dress, found me near the champagne fountain. Miss Morgan, Mr. Morgan had to leave early. He asked me to apologize on his behalf. He had an urgent business matter to attend to. Urgent business matter. My son had just learned the truth about my past, about everything I'd sacrificed for him, and had run away. He couldn't face me, couldn't face what had done. The assistant handed me a card. He wanted you to have his car service take you home. Just call this number when you're ready. I took the card, but didn't call. Dr. Walsh offered to drive me back to my hotel instead. I accepted gratefully. In his rental car, a comfortable sedan that smelled of leather and subtle cologne, we talked about the old days at Stanford. He told me about the research that had continued after I left, about the breakthroughs and setbacks, about how often they'd wished I was still there to guide them. You should know, he said, as we crossed the Bay Bridge, city lights glittering on the water below, your research saved countless lives. Even though it took longer without you, it happened because you laid the foundation. Everything we accomplished was built on your work. I cried quietly, watching the lights blur through my tears, grieving for the life I'd left behind, but also, strangely, feeling grateful for the life I'd chosen. Would you consider coming to Johns Hopkins? Dr. Walsh asked. Not full-time, just as a visiting lecturer. Share your experiences, your insights. My students would be honored to meet you. I'll think about it, I promised. He dropped me at my hotel, a modest place I'd booked online for $89 a night. He didn't comment on the location or the faded sign, just made sure I got safely inside. Take care, Dr. Morgan, he said. The world is better because you were in it. Don't let anyone, not even your son, make you forget that. I rode the elevator to the 3rd floor and entered my small room with its single bed and outdated carpet, sat on the edge of the bed still wearing my navy dress, and I let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. 3 days passed. Bryce didn't call, didn't text. I returned to Sacramento, to my small apartment, with its second-hand furniture and the kitchen table where I'd helped him with homework for 13 years. I tried to go back to my normal routine, went to work at the clinic, took vitals and distributed medications, smiled at patients who had no idea that I'd once been someone important in the medical world. But something had shifted inside me. The Gala had awakened something I'd buried for so long I'd almost forgotten it existed. I started looking up my old research papers online, found them in medical databases, saw the citation counts Dr. Walsh had mentioned. Read comments from researchers who called my work groundbreaking and visionary. Saw my name in textbooks, in lecture slides, in conference presentations. I'd thought that life was over, that when I left Stanford, I'd close that chapter permanently. But maybe chapters don't close. Maybe they just pause, waiting for us to have the courage to turn the page again. On the 4th day, my doorbell rang. It was 11 in the morning, and I was still in my pajamas, drinking coffee and reading a medical journal article that cited my 1995 paper. I opened the door. Bryce stood there, and he looked terrible, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes. His hair was messy, his clothes rumpled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Mom. His voice cracked on the word. Can I come in? I stepped aside silently. He walked into my small living room and stood awkwardly in the middle of it, looking around like he was seeing it for the first time. The worn couch I'd bought, used 15 years ago, the coffee table with its water rings, the bookshelf full of medical texts and paperbacks from library sales, the framed photos of him at every stage of his life. We sat at the kitchen table, The same table where Id helped him with algebra, where Wed had dinner together 1,000 times, where Id paid bills and budgeted every penny to make sure He'd have everything he needed. The silence stretched between us, heavy and painful. Finally, Bryce spoke. I didn't know. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Mom, I swear I didn't know. You never asked," I said quietly, echoing Dr. Walsh's devastating question. Bryce flinched like Id struck him. "You're right. I never asked. I just assumed. I thought you were just a nurse. Just a regular mom. Just," I repeated. "That's an interesting word, Bryce. Just a nurse. Just a mom. As if those things are less valuable than being a doctor or a researcher. As if the people who care for others are somehow worth less. That's not what I meant, isn't it?" I looked at him directly. "You were ashamed of me. You put me at table 17. You called me boring. You auctioned me off for $2 in front of 285 people. Because you thought I was just a regular person who hadn't accomplished anything important." Tears streamed down his face. "I was so focused on building my own success, on proving I was somebody, that I didn't see I came from someone extraordinary. I didn't see you." He broke down then, sobbing like he hadn't since he was a child. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make this right." I let him cry. I'd cried enough myself over the past few days. When he finally composed himself enough to speak again, I asked the question that had been burning in my heart. "Do you know why I never told you about Stanford? About my research?" He shook his head, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Because I didn't want you to feel guilty. I didn't want you carrying the weight of my choice. I chose you freely, Bryce, with full knowledge of what I was giving up. I wanted you to live your life without that burden. But somewhere along the way," I continued, my voice steady despite the pain in my chest, "you stopped seeing me as a person. I became just Mom, just the woman in the background of your successful life, and I let that happen. I made myself smaller so you could be bigger. That was my mistake." Bryce looked up at me, confusion in his red-rimmed eyes. "How was that your mistake? I should have known. I should have asked." "Yes," I agreed. "You should have. But I also should have maintained my own identity, my own sense of self-worth. I gave up my career, but I didn't have to give up who I was. I let myself fade into the background. I taught you, without meaning to, that my accomplishments didn't matter, that I didn't matter." I reached across the table and took his hand, something I hadn't done in years. "We both made mistakes, Bryce. You stopped seeing me, but I also stopped letting myself be seen." Bryce and I sat at that kitchen table for 3 hours that day. We talked about things we should have discussed years ago, about his father's death and how it had shaped both of us in different ways, about my decision to leave Stanford and what it had really meant, about the distance that had grown between us and how neither of us had known how to bridge it. "How do I make this right?" he asked again. This time not as a desperate plea, but as a genuine question. "You start by seeing people fully," I told him. "Not just what they can do for you or how they reflect on you. You see them as whole human beings with their own dreams, sacrifices, and worth." I told him about Dr. Walsh's invitation to lecture at Johns Hopkins. "I think I'm going to do it." His eyes widened. "Really?" "Yes, not to prove anything to you or anyone else, but because I want to reconnect with that part of myself. I gave up my career, but am realizing I don't have to give up being a doctor, being a researcher. I can be those things and still be your mother. I can be all of those things at once. You should absolutely do it," Bryce said firmly. "Mom, you should do everything you've been holding back from. You should. God, I don't even know. Write papers, consult on research, speak at conferences, whatever you want." He paused, then, And the scholarship fund, I want you to lead it, not just oversee it. I want it to be your vision, your values, your legacy. I'll provide the funding, but it should be yours to shape. Something in my chest, something that had been tight and painful since the gala, began to ease. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of healing. 6 months passed. I gave my lecture at Johns Hopkins in September. The auditorium was packed, standing room only. Medical students, researchers, professors, even some doctors who'd driven from neighboring states to hear me speak. I stood at that podium with my notes, looking out at all those eager faces, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 28 years. The thrill of sharing knowledge, of contributing to something larger than myself. I spoke about my research, yes, about vaccine development and adaptive platforms and the methodology that had become foundational to modern infectious disease response. But I also spoke about choice and sacrifice, about the different ways we save lives, about understanding what matters most and having the courage to act on that understanding. I didn't cure diseases after 1997, I told them, but I raised a son who would create technology to help millions access healthcare. I was there for a child who needed his mother after losing his father. I made a choice that felt right for me at the time, and I don't regret it. But I also don't regret reclaiming this part of myself now. The applause was thunderous. Afterwards, dozens of people wanted to talk to me, to ask questions, to share how my work had influenced their own. Dr. Walsh stood at the back of the room, beaming with pride. I started consulting part-time on vaccine research, working remotely, advising teams at Stanford and Johns Hopkins and the CDC. My mind was as sharp as ever, maybe sharper for having taken a long break. I brought perspectives from my years as a clinic nurse, understanding how research translated to real patients in real situations. The teams I worked with valued that insight. The Dr. Dakota Morgan Medical Scholarship Fund awarded its first grants in October. 25 students, all of them pursuing careers in medical technology and healthcare. I prioritized single parents, people who understood the weight of responsibility and sacrifice. I interviewed each applicant personally, listened to their stories, heard their dreams, saw their determination. Bryce attended the award ceremony. He gave a short speech acknowledging that his success was built on the sacrifices of others, particularly his mother. He didn't try to take credit or minimize what had happened at the gala. He was honest about his mistakes and about what he was trying to learn. The relationship between us was slowly rebuilding. Not perfect, maybe it never would be perfect again, but it was honest now, real. Every Sunday, Bryce drives to Sacramento. He comes to my apartment, the one he used to seem so uncomfortable in, and he helps me cook dinner. We make simple meals, pasta, roasted chicken, vegetables from the farmer's market. We sit at that old kitchen table and we talk about real things. He tells me about his company, but also about his struggles, his doubts, his therapy sessions. His learning, he says, to value people for who they are rather than what they accomplish. Hess learning to see the humans behind the roles. Last Sunday, he told me about a new initiative he's starting. I want to highlight the stories of mothers, he said. The sacrifices nobody sees. The choices that shape successful people. Tell their stories, honor their contributions. I smiled. That's good, honey. But remember, it's not just about sacrifice. It's about choice, agency, love. It's about seeing people for who they fully are, not reducing them to what they gave up or what they achieved. Every person is whole and complex and worthy of being seen completely. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Real understanding this time. Tonight, I sit alone in my small apartment. The same apartment I've lived in for 28 years. I could move now. The consulting work pays well, and Bryce has offered repeatedly to buy me a house, to upgrade my life. But I like it here. This place holds memories. This table witnessed homework and laughter and tears. These walls protected us when we needed protection. I think about the Gala sometimes, about that terrible moment when my son called me boring and auctioned me off for $2, about the humiliation that felt like it would swallow me whole. But I also think about what came after, about Dr. Walsh standing up and saying, $2 million, about the truth being revealed in front of 285 people, about the scholarship fund that now bears my name, about the students whose education I'm funding, whose dreams I'm helping make possible. Sometimes our worst moments crack us open and reveal truths we've been hiding even from ourselves. Id made myself invisible. Id let my accomplishments fade into the background, convinced myself they didn't matter. Id told myself that being just mom was enough, should be enough, had to be enough. But I wasn't just mom. I was never just anything. I was Dr. Dakota Morgan, groundbreaking researcher. And I was Dakota Morgan, devoted mother who packed school lunches and worked double shifts. And I was Dakota Morgan, a woman with dreams and gifts and worth that existed independent of either role. Id thought I had to choose career or motherhood, research or love, the important work or the important person. But that was a false choice, an either-or that shouldn't have existed. I gave up my full-time research career, yes, but I saved a life the night I held my grieving 4-year-old son and promised him we'd be okay. I saved him again every day after, with my presence and my love and my commitment. That was medicine too. Different, perhaps, but just as vital. And now, in my 60s, I've learned I don't have to choose anymore. I can be Dr. Dakota Morgan, the researcher, consulting on groundbreaking work, and Dakota the mother, having Sunday dinners with her son, and Dakota the woman with her own dreams and her own life. All at once. All of those things simultaneously. The lesson I've learned, the one I want to share, is this. Never make yourself smaller to make others comfortable. Never hide your light, thinking it's selfish to shine. Choose sacrifice when you want to, fully and freely, but never apologize for being extraordinary. Every version of yourself matters. Every chapter of your story counts. The brilliant researcher I was at 35, the devoted mother I was at 40, the consultant and mentor I am at 63. None of those versions erases the others. They're all me. They're all valuable. They're all worthy of recognition and respect. And never, ever let anyone reduce you to $2 or to boring or to nothing, because you are everything you've ever been. Every sacrifice you've made, every dream you've pursued, every person you've loved, every life you've touched. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. I am a mother and a researcher and a woman still discovering what her life can be, and I am enough. I have always been enough. Even when I felt invisible, even when I was called boring, even when I was valued at $2, I was always worth more than that. And so are you. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever made yourself smaller to make someone else comfortable? Have you ever hidden your light, diminished your accomplishments, or let someone reduce your worth? What would it mean for you to reclaim all the versions of yourself? To refuse to be defined by one role or one chapter of your life? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own worth or the worth of someone in your life who's been invisible for too long, please share it. Like this video so others can find it. Subscribe to hear more stories about finding your voice, reclaiming your identity, and understanding your inherent value. And most importantly, share this with someone who needs to remember that they are worth so much more than the world sometimes tells them they are. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for seeing me. And remember, you are extraordinary, even in your ordinary moments. You are valuable, even when others fail to recognize it. You are enough, exactly as you are. May you always remember your worth, and may you never let anyone convince you to be less than you are.